It's the question everybody's asking. How do we get our on-prem data into Microsoft Fabric? Coming up next, we show you how to do that. SQL Server 2022 into Microsoft Fabric. Today on Tales from the Field.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be.
This is your first time finding your way to Tales from the Field. Give us a like and give us a subscribe. We drop content every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Tuesday, we have our Azure Data Community Roundtable, where we feature content from the creators in the Azure Data Community for the Azure Data Community. And then on Monday and Wednesday, we drop our MS Tech Bits. That's a video where we've learned something working with a customer, working with a product group, inspired by others, or working on our own. You're watching one of those right now. Let's get over to that great technical content. All right, so we're going to start out with my SQL Server 2022 instance, and we're going to import some data from my worldwide importers database. And the goal is just to be able to get this from on-prem. We're going to install an on-premise data gateway, so it's important to look at the documentation. We're going to start by downloading and installing a standard gateway. We double-click the installation file after we download it. We accept the EULA. Now, this is going to take a little while to install. I've speeded this up, but don't worry, it will install just fine. Now, once this installs, we're going to authenticate. I'm authenticating using my credentials, so that way we can connect this to my Fabric workspace. It's important that you're doing that. Once I sign in, I'm going to authenticate. I'm going to register this as a new gateway. I'm going to name this. This name is important. We're going to be using this later. bball PBI Gateway. And then I'm going to enter some recovery keys just to make sure that everything looks good. This looks good. Now I can go over to my Fabric workspace, and I'm going to go to settings up at the top, because what I need to do is I need to manage my connections and gateways, and I'm going to need to add a new Power BI gateway for us to be able to use to get to this data. It's an on-premise. The cluster name, well, there's that name that we just used a second ago, bball PBI Gateway. I'm going to name the connection name. We will be using this later, so remember this. And I want to name it exactly what it is. I'm going to say bball SQL 2022 because it's a SQL 2022 instance. And then we've got a lot of connection types to choose from, but I'm going to scroll all the way down until I can find my SQL Server option. And once I find my SQL Server option, I select it. And now I get to type in some information. So I'm going to type in my server's name, Avengers Tower, because why not, right? It's kind of fun. So Avengers Tower is my server name. My database is the Wide World Importers Data Warehouse. And then after that, I need to pick an authentication method. I'm going to select basic in this case. We're using a SQL authentication to be able to go through to my instance. I've got a PBI gateway username, so I can restrict the access specifically to that. I've entered the password. Everything else is good. I'm just going to go ahead and click create. And then this is going to create our gateway. And after this is created, I can go back over to my Fabric workspace. All right, so I'm back in my workspace, and I'm going to go and I'm going to click on new, because we need to create a new Gen 2 data flow. So I click new, show all, and I'm going to go over to the Dataflow Gen 2. Once I click on this, this is going to take a second to load, and then I'm going to get data from another source. Click on that, and boom, there we go, a SQL Server database. So let's click on it, and I need to put in my server name. Again, Avengers Tower, because why not, right? It's awesome. And then for my database, I'm going to put in Wide World Importers Data Warehouse. Now, once I do this, you're going to notice it goes from creating a new connection to finding the Power BI gateway that we created. I click next, and boom, I'm connected. I'm connected to my on-prem system. I'm going to select Dimension Customer, and let's just import a table real quick. Now that I have this, I want to change this, because you'll notice dimension.customer was the schema name. Dimension was the schema, and it's imported as dimension space customer. I'm just going to change this to dim customer. It's going to, by default, go to the DBO. And if you look at the top, we've got all the Power Query options. A lot of transformations I could do, but I'm good with this data. I need to add a destination, though. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select my warehouse. I've already got those connection details in there, so I just click next because I want to go into my Fabric warehouse that I've created. I'm going to select the warehouse under the workspace I've created, baseball, because that's the demo we've been using so far. I'm going to click next. Now, it has the table name. I could edit it again there. I could have left it in the Power Query, changed it here. But one thing real quick, these destination settings, I'm adding this value, but you could append, you can replace. Those columns at the bottom, those are foreign key constraints, so they're ignored, but I'm good to go. Now I can click publish, and what's going to happen is I come back to the main space and my data flow is automatically going to trigger and run. Now I do have the capability to put a refresh schedule on this if I would like, but there's a lot of great stuff. But this Dataflow Gen 2, this is how I'd get it. Let's take a look at the refresh history just to validate everything ran okay. I can see the status has succeeded. I can click through. I can see a couple additional details. DIM customer is in. I could edit the data flow if I wanted to, but I want to go to my data warehouse. I want to see, did the data import? It's going to load up. And sure enough, ooh, I see my table, DIM customer. And if I click on it, there's my data. Bam! We've got our data from SQL Server 2022. So what did we cover? We covered a really big thing. We covered one of the biggest questions I get from customers all the time, which is how do I get my on-premise data into Fabric? Keep in mind that Microsoft Fabric is a preview product, and we are going to get more and more options as we complete our march to general availability. So keep a watch here because you're going to see some new and amazing things that are coming. But if you are a customer going, hey, how do I do my POC? How do I get my data from on-prem into Microsoft Fabric for me to be able to play around with it? This is how you use a data flow, a Gen 2 data flow, and you could have a destination be your warehouse, be your lake house. Not only that, how powerful are Dataflow Gen 2? It is Power Query. It is that visual tool that if you're a Power BI user, you have known for years, and you can do your ETL import operations. And I went over it really, really quick, but there was a screen where we've got that load option where we pick the SQL Server. We could also pick OneLake. We could also drag a file directly into that window and begin utilizing the Power Query manipulation the same way we can if we wanted to use an Excel file or a text file. So you know where we like to keep this going? Down in the comments. Sound off below. Is there anything that you'd like to see? Any questions that you have? We would love to hear from you. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on Tales from the Field. Be good to one another out there. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Just like every different season, yo. Sometimes I'm high, other times I'm barely breathing, though.